still know what you did last summer. Like, one of the most universal experiences amongst all horror fans are those first time watches that we all catch on TV as kids. Every now and then you'll get a timeless classic, but most of the time it ends up being mindless stupid fun, such as I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. First two last summer movies were horror movies that I caught on TV for the first time as a kid, but it was actually the sequel that I saw first. And despite the backlash from pretty much everyone, I have a big soft spot for this hot mess of a slasher flick, and so today I like to talk to you guys about why I Still Know What You Did Last Summer is my favorite guilty pleasure. So as you know, well, maybe you don't know, but those who do know that I Still Know is the direct sequel to the 1997 slasher hit I Know What You Did Last Summer, which involved a group of friends covering up a hit and run only to be tormented by the hook-wielding Ben Willis, their would-be victim a year later. I Still Know features the surviving characters of that film being terrorized by the insane fisherman on an island resort 1 year after the last film. Despite being ripe territory for suspense, very few horror films that I've ever seen have ever taken advantage of the specific location. The incoming storm and isolation from the mainland created a lot of the film's tension and atmosphere, as well as significantly amping up the action from the previous film. I think the main reason that I love this movie so much is that it just kind of checks off all the boxes that I'm looking for when it comes to a slasher flick. It's got a great setting, campy acting performances, a rocking soundtrack, plenty of kills, it's a sequel, it's just about every slasher trope that you can think of. Things are a little different though. Instead of playing up the murder mystery angle from the last film, this film kind of just plays up the straight up slasher angles and sets up the new characters just to die one by one. That doesn't mean, however, that the film isn't rife with callbacks and references to the first film. The film even goes out of its way to recreate the "what are you waiting for" moment from the first movie, and it's just incredible to watch. Hell, even the name alone just brings back the memory of the late 90s slasher craze. I'm convinced that this movie's poor reputation is half based on the name alone. It's like instantly iconic in a so bad it's good kind of way, which this movie definitely relishes in. A story begins with some voiceover flashbacks from the first film, and my favorite kind of cheap cop-out, the jump scare dream sequence. We learn that Julie has continued to suffer from PTSD over the events of the last 2 summers, and in some of the film's few quiet moments, we see Julie's grief over the loss of her friends from the previous film. It's these kinds of moments that I live for in slasher films and horror sequels, especially films that bring back characters from film to film and focus on their trauma and guilt from the previous film. It always bums me out when watching older horror franchises that rarely cared about continuity and bringing back all these old characters. And it's all very surface level here, but I do appreciate the attempt to inject some real emotional drama into the film. And as the movie goes on, we see that Julie is all kinds of traumatized by the events of the past 2 summers, but what Julie doesn't know until about midway through the film is that Ben Willis is actually still alive, so we often get back-to-back scenes of the real Ben Willis killing somebody, followed by another hallucination from Julie. A smarter movie probably would have played this up a bit more, maybe have a scene with Julie seeing the real Ben Willis, but then playing it off as another hallucination, kind of like that scene from Halloween H2O. It becomes a bit comical at just the 10-minute mark, and the movie continually plays these scenes as if they're supposed to be conveying suspense and terror, but it just utterly fails in both. Yeah, speaking of which, these constant fake-out jump scares would be a great drinking game, as well as all the times that the characters do something inexplicably stupid. Like, I get that horror movies kind of have to operate on idiot logic, otherwise the movie would be over in 5 minutes. But this movie just kind of takes that concept and really just runs through the hills with it.
Wait right here.
No, why can't we come with you?
Because it's safer here, right?
Brasilia, that's the capital of Brazil, not Rio.
I mean, just so stupid. And I love it. I love it. Like, truly, I truly love it. One of the more infamous plot points in this movie is the radio contest that the characters answer in order to win this trip to the Bahamas. I would like to point out that in the 7th grade that I had a geography test, and one of the questions on that geography test was, what was the capital of Brazil? I'm not sure if I got any of the other questions on that test right, but I know for damn sure that I got that question right. And who says horror movies don't have educational value? One thing that I do feel that this movie did improve upon from the first film was the role of Julie's best friend. And hey, all respect to Sarah Michelle Gellar and her iconic chase scene from the first movie, but Brandy's Carla Wilson is a much more well-rounded character and played with some real spunk. She is much more sympathetic to Julie than the other characters, and their friendship over the course of the movie makes up a bulk of the emotionally resonant moments of the film. I mean, come on, who didn't get misty-eyed seeing Carla limp into the sunrise with Julie and Ray? Carla Wilson and Brandy were truly made of steel, and to be one of the few black leading characters in a horror film to survive has to count for something, right? But wait, what's that I hear you asking? Where's Ray? Well, Freddie Prinze Jr. has stated that he's not seen the film following the critical thrashing it received upon release, though I bet that's not the only reason. I mean, from the looks of it, this wasn't a pleasant filming experience for Prinze, who separated from the main cast for much of the runtime, often has to engage in some of the more grueling work, and while it is nice to see him have his big damn hero moment at the end of the film, I do kind of feel bad for Freddie because his character has nothing of substance to work with, and we never really explore Ray's side of things, or if he has any sort of lingering trauma over the incident or not. It is the Julie James show through and through. And while we're on the subject, let's talk about Miss Jennifer Love Hewitt. In the first film, the character of Julie comes off extremely unsympathetic, even though she's supposed to be our de facto final girl. Yeah, she had no part in the initial accident and was the one who most visibly expressed her remorse, but she also felt that made her above the other characters, and she came off incredibly insufferable and annoying. Not to mention, she kept the secret for well over a year. If she truly wanted to come clean, she could have done so. Ben Willis wasn't so crazy for specifically targeting her all these years, if you ask me. But in the sequel, it's a much different story. Julie is much more lively, she is attempting to have fun with her friends, and she carries herself much better than in the first film. She's funny, excitable, and it even seems like she's truly on the road to recovery before Ben Willis shows up to ruin the festivities. Speaking of which, back on Isla de Muerta, Julie and her friends are all glum that they have their entire resort to themselves, which makes absolutely no sense to me. I mean, why not just have another character there, or a couple, or some more staff, I don't know, just to kind of boost up the body count. Yeah, I get it just makes them more isolated and it kind of just contributes to the suspense, but I don't know, I mean, this is a slasher film, right? I mean, come on. I mean, but hey, what do I, a lowly YouTube critic, know, right? I know one thing though, I know what you did last summer. But as Julie sees the real Ben Willis in the background for the first time, along with Willis's usual brand of spring cleaning, she immediately suspects the murders are happening again. But having cried wolf way too many times, her friends don't believe her until the bodies of the resort staff literally start falling on top of them. With no means of escape and Ben closing in on them, Jules decides it's time to fight. What follows is a series of chase scenes that, in my honest opinion, rivals Helen's famed chase scene from the original film. Julie, Carla, and the bartender Nancy all flee from Ben as he chases them all throughout the Ghoulish Island getaway. Brandy even gets a chance to show off her action girl chops as she evades Ben's hook time and time again and earns her survival, even if it is only because of her repeatedly throwing herself through glass windows. And just when things seem to be looking up for the survivors, what's this now? Dun dun dun! Twist time! It turns out that Carla and Julie's friend Will was Ben's son all along.
Think about it. You'll get it. Will Benson? Ben's son.
Get it? 'Cause his name is Will Benson? And he's Ben's son? No joke. They actually wrote that. Man, I can't believe I watched this crap. Yeah, they really tried to make this a thing, but to be honest, it's so obvious that Will is in on the murder plot from the very beginning, especially when the local voodoo priest played by Bill Cobbs lets it drop during his exposition dump that Ben had 2 kids, a boy and a girl. Speaking of Cobbs, while it is cool to have him and other character actors like Jeffrey Combs in the film, their characters in the voodoo plot only serve as poorly disguised red herrings, and they all end up on the cutting room floor just like the rest of the staff. Anyways, as you can guess, Ben and Will are foiled yet again when Ray shows up just in the nick of time to save his once again reluctant girlfriend, and I say it like that because I don't know if I ship Ray and Julie, to be honest. Yeah, they're cute I guess, but if I'm being honest, I kinda miss Helen and Barry from the first film. Their characters were a lot more interesting than these two. They're just nothing. But hooray! Our heroes made it, and 1 year later, Julie and Ray are looking very snug and quite content within their new domestic paradise. But, this being a horror film, we have to end things on yet another fake-out jump scare, and therefore Ben appears under Julie's bed right as the movie ends to drag her under and finish her off for good, maybe? I don't know if this is a dream or not. We'll never know for sure because we never got a direct sequel to this film, and because I refuse to acknowledge that flaming garbage barge known as I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer, this remains the final film in the series so far. So yeah, that's I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Is it perfect? Not in the slightest. Like, at all. It suffers from just about every slasher and horror movie cliche. It reeks of the late 90s cynicism that plagues most teen-oriented films of that time. And our horror veterans that make appearances are wasted in this by-the-numbers studio slasher that exists only to further cash in on the success of Scream. And yet, despite of all of that, or maybe perhaps because of all of that, I Still Know remains one of my all-time favorite guilty pleasures and my absolute go-to when I'm in the mood for cheesy slasher fun. It's a film that knows exactly what it is, it doesn't hold itself to a higher standard, and it absolutely relishes in the conventions that have made horror what it is over the past 30 years. Upon release, the film was a minor hit at the box office, grossing $84 million over a $24 million budget, making it a technical commercial success. Though this came well under the $124 million gross of the original and far under the $171 million gross for Scream 2, which is almost equal to its original film at the box office and critical reception. Along with the extreme negative reception, this film has long suffered a reputation of being one of the worst horror sequels of all time, and emblematic of the worst tendencies in sequels in general. And while it didn't kill off the slasher genre completely, it remained one of the last big studio teen slasher films to come out of the 90s, and effectively killed any interest that the cast had in going forward with another sequel. Yeah, while there is a lot of truth to all these statements, despite all of its flaws, I still love this movie, and as bad as it is, it's not 7% on Rotten Tomatoes bad. I think film critics and movie fans in general need to really appreciate films for what they are and not what they want them to be, especially horror films. Horror films get judged to such a high, insane degree that it's ridiculous, and people love to go see horror films and say that they were terrible for some reason. I don't understand it personally. As previously mentioned, the location and cinematography provided a lot of ambiance and suspense as the storm closes in, and the actors here all deliver solid performances required for the roles. Music is also fantastic, and it builds upon the already wonderful score from the first film, and it's one of those rare horror sequels that actually tries to maintain its quality and continuity from the previous film. For a horror film, especially a slasher, that's impressive and alone deserves praise. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe this film just hits that particular funny bone in me that just loves horror slasher trash. Whatever it is, I will never tire of watching these films every 4th of July, and I will always be forever thankful for the eternal spring of joy that is the slasher genre.
It happened last summer. He killed my friends and now he's after me. He's in my dreams, just watching me, following me, making me pay for what we did to him.
I've been over this before, Julie. The man is dead. You said so yourself.
No. He's not dead, he's just waiting. It's happening again.
Alright guys, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me as always. You guys take care of yourselves, be safe. Let me know down in the comments what you think of I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. And I will see you all again here real soon.